Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Zenaton, and welcome to today's video for Legends of Runeterra. Today's video is going to be aimed more for newer players and for players who just have less in-game resources, less shards, less wildcards. And today's video, if you haven't somehow read the title of this video, is going to be focused on budget decks. I'm going to be giving you guys 5 budget decks that are a very good stepping stone into a more competitive form of the game. Each of these budget decks I'm giving are not top tier decks because obviously they are budget decks, but they can be upgraded with more champions, more epics, more rares, and so on and so forth to become very viable decks in the current meta. Who knows, in the future, of course, these decks might just be completely wiped out. But for the here and now, each of these decks, after upgrades, is a viable deck to get you into Masters and play at a high level. Before we get into it though, let me just go over how this video is going to be framed. I'm going to first show you a budget deck. I will talk about certain card choices, why something may be in the deck or something may not be in the deck, how to play the deck, a quick little tutorial, and then I will show a upgraded version of the list and why certain cards have been removed, certain cards have been added, maybe some regions have been changed, and so on and so forth. So, let's get into it with our first deck. Now, our first deck is Scouts. Scouts is a very powerful deck, also known as Demacia Midrange. There are various forms of Scout decks. The budget version we have here is a Bannerman version. Only one champion in the form of Misfortune. Very, very strong deck. It's your standard mid-range deck. If you've ever played a card game, you kind of know what you're getting here. You kind of just want to curve out early, get a nice curve going. Because of the way Legends of Runeterra works with spell mana, if you miss a 1 or 2 drop, don't worry too much about it because you have combat tricks such as Ranger's Resolve and Sharp Sight to help you out and actually use that mana that you missed. So you're really just going to be aiming to get a nice curve out, play a Bannerman eventually, use Ranger's Resolve and Sharp Sight to protect your board, attack in a lot with a lot of scouts, and then finish off your opponent with a big turn with a Relentless Pursuit and just kill them. Misfortune is the champion because she synergizes well with the multiple attacks that Scout gives, and just a very strong deck. Honestly, you could take this deck as is now as a budget version and probably get to a fairly high level with this deck. Now, let's look at the upgraded version. Now, for our upgraded version, not that many changes. We have added another champion, we have added Quinn, and we have still stayed with the Bannerman choice. There are other variants of this deck that remove Bannerman to add in more Bilgewater cards, such as Island Navigator, to get more scouts. And by adding more scouts into the deck, you have a more likely chance of leveling up Misfortune and Quinn. But this version is a little bit more easier to play. That's why I decided to include this one. Also, you would have a lot of these cards already from building the budget version. So if you like the Bannerman and how it plays, just build Quinn, put her in the deck. You'll have a great time with the deck and with the cards. Very powerful deck, extremely strong, very good in the right meta, very aggressive mid-range. You got a lot of cool tricks like Sharp Sight and Ranger's Resolve to make people mad. If you're all about mid-range and you're all about just pushing pressure onto your opponent and just attacking and attacking and attacking, this is kind of a good deck for you, and you should check it out. Now, let's go and look at the second deck. The second deck is actually a deck I like a lot myself. Also another mid-range deck. We are looking at Ashe Midrange. There are a lot of forms, or a lot of names for this deck. Some people call it Frostbite Midrange. Some people call it Ashe midrange. Some people just call it Ashe Sejuani, as we'll see in the upgraded version where we put in Sejuani into the deck. Ashe midrange, Frostbite midrange, is a deck that is focused very similarly to Scouts. It just wants to put stuff on the board, and just control the board, get in some nice attacks, use its combat tricks to get favorable attacks in, using the freeze mechanics so your opponent's stuff will have no power when they actually fight your stuff. The synergy between things with Challenger like Trifarian Glory Seeker and Ashe and freezes in general, and other combat tricks like Troll Chant is great. To prevent yourself from running out of cards, you got Trifarian Assessor, so you can draw more cards in the late game, find some more gas if you need it. Very strong card. Reckoning is usually a near one-sided board clear because a lot of your stuff is going to have 5 or more power. And the way you actually win with this deck, because a lot of its stuff can just be chump block forever and ever, is you will use Ashe after she levels up, play a couple of freezes like a Harsh Winds and then an Ashe attack in, and your opponent won't be able to block, and you will win the game. Very powerful deck. Again, if you want to play like a more slow mid-range, if you weren't thinking about scouts, if you want a slower, fatter, thicker mid-range deck, this is for you. Let's look at upgrades real quick, because the deck gets even better with upgrades. As it is here, the deck's already great. And in fact, I like this deck too, as for beginners, because when you are a new player in Legends of Runeterra, you get login rewards, and on, I believe, I might be wrong here, but I believe it's the 7th day of logging in, you get a deck that has 2 copies of Ashe in it. So this deck will be really cheap to build with that afterwards. So let's look at upgrades though. Now, when we upgrade the deck, we add a little bit more meat to the deck. A little bit more late game. We add in some Sejuanis and a couple of Captain Farrons. Very, very good. The Captain Farron I especially love. My personal list, I usually like to play 2. I also like to play 3 Trifarian Assessors. I just wanted to use this list as a more... a less greedy list. I always build my personal deck list greedier than the standard because I'm a greedy player in card games, so I wanted to give you guys a more traditional standard list. Rhymefang Wolf is a very cute card with freezes. It's a card that gets cut a lot though for just other units, more combat tricks, and so on and so forth. Sejuani also, very powerful card. Synergizes really well with Ashe's leveling up ability of just lots of Frostbite stuff. And because you play a lot of stuff early, like the Omen Hawk and the Avarosan Sentry, you will probably get in a little bit of chip damage in the early game, so Sejuani leveling up is also a very real possibility. And even though this version of the deck only runs 1 Captain Farron, because of Babbling Bjerg, you might actually be able to draw it relatively consistently. Now, of course, Avarosan Hearthguard buffs your stuff up, so it kind of throws out the numbers, but that card's just too good. Giving all of your units +1/+1 that are still in the deck is just so powerful. So if you want to build a big, fatty deck that just sits on the board and puts its butt on the board and just says, I'm here, I've got a lot of meat, and I'm still going to be attacking in, and I've got all these combat tricks to make all combat bad for you, and then you get in a big attack with a big board of lots of fatties of like 5/5, 6/6s, whatever, and all of them are unblockable thanks to a leveled up Ashe, this is definitely the deck for you. It's so satisfying when you get that. You have really cool tricks too with like freezes plus Culling Strike. Troll Chant's just kind of a busted card. Very fun deck. I'm not even much of a mid-range player, and I still like to bust this deck out every now and again. Now, next up, we've got a very fun deck. Not my style again, more tempo-based. We've got Endure, named after the card They Who Endure. They Who Endure has a number of different builds. The most common build is similar to the version here, which is a more tempo-based version. You could also make a more control-y version with things like Vengeances, Ruinations, Grasp of the Undying, Withering Wail, but the tempo version is more common. Now, you might look at this deck and say, how do I play this deck, streamer? So this deck is playing like a typical mid-rangey tempo list. It will play just a standard 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop. You have some combos like Curse Keeper, Ravenous Butcher to get a 4/3 and a 3/2 for 2 mana. Caretakers to create saplings and to kill your Curse Keeper if you want as well. And get some 2/1 challengers to remove problematic stuff or just tie up stuff so they can't block your bigger boys. Doom Beast helps by draining your opponent. 4 damage. Life swings are really good. 2 damage to your opponent, 2 health for you. Wraithcaller is just a big ball of stats. Neverglade Collector doesn't get played as much anymore, but it's still nice because a lot of things on your side are dying and it still drains a lot. So you'll be basically playing like a very tempo-y based deck, and sometimes you won't even need the They Who Endure plan, but because your aggression will be so much and your tempo will be so good, you just kill your opponent. But with all these things dying on your side because your opponent's trying to stop you and clear your board and so on, because, you know, they're trying not to die, your They Who Endure will get bigger. They Who Endure gets +1/+1 for every single unit of yours that dies, including things that are like ephemeral, so the saplings help. So eventually, in the late game, if you still haven't killed your opponent, you'll play a big They Who Endure. Since They Who Endure has Overwhelm as well, you could just attack in with a They Who Endure and maybe kill your opponent that way. And you also have some atrocities to finish off your opponent in case they are still somehow alive. The spells themselves are just pretty decent Vile Feast because it's just a general ping, helps you out a lot, lets you ping problematic stuff. Maybe it lets you ping your own stuff if you want to kill something on your side, like you could use Vile Feast to kill your own Curse Keeper. Stalking Shadows is just extremely OP, 2 mana to draw 2 units. And of course, it's much more complex than that, but it's still really good. And then Glimpse Beyond is a very nice card, 2 mana draw 2. You have to kill one of your units, but you use Glimpse Beyond to respond to a kill spell, like a single combat or a vengeance, and then your opponent's sad because you were able to draw 2. Sure, your unit still died, so yes, they got their goal of killing your unit, but you got to draw 2 cards, of course. And Atrocity on and They Who Endure, who is really big, will just usually kill your opponent. Of course, you have to be careful of things like freeze and silence, because if your opponent plays a freeze or a silence on your They Who Endure in response to an Atrocity, you have probably lost the game, and you're also probably a very, very sad boy. Now let's look at how to upgrade the deck. Boom. We have actually taken out Elise for Callista. Some lists like to run both Callista and Elise. I personally only like Callista. And the reason for that at the moment right now is because Fearsome Aggro is a very popular deck, so a lot of people are trying to beat things that come down early, like Elise, so I personally prefer just putting in more small units like Warden's Prey. Not much changes here. We replace our Vile Feast for Unspeakable Horror to give us extra gas. Also, Unspeakable Horror, unlike Vile Feast, can hit the face. In this game, it's called Nexus, but if you come from other games, you might be used to saying the term face. I mean, I still use it too, in all honesty. Spells are pretty much the same, though, besides that. Game plan is still the same. Gonna just tempo out and kill your opponent, really. Very powerful deck. Very annoying deck, too. Very resilient against certain strategies. If you're the kind of guy who's like, I just want to be that guy who plays the lull, not fun, not interactive deck and just go like boom, boom, and just drop down 2 cards and win the game, this is the game for you, or the deck for you, sorry. Because in Runeterra, you can bank 3 spell mana, and your maximum mana is 10 mana. That means if you have maximum mana, you can cast the Who Endure and Atrocity in the same turn, and that's really scary. And usually that is a quick win. Next up, for the aggro players out there, the ones who really like playing aggro, you know, those face hunters, those mono red players, I got something for you guys. I got a budget burn deck. This list, it's taken a lot of nerfs. It's still good. It's a good starting point to if you want to go fast and you want to hurt your opponent and hit him in the face a lot. You got just a standard bunch of units. No champions, though, too. You might see that, and you might say, why no champions? It's a budget list, of course. Don't worry. When we look at the upgrades, we will add some champions. If you have some starting champions when you are starting out in the game, starting stuff that's good are like Dravens, Jinxes, Teemos. Darius is also decent. So yeah, like if you've ever played a aggro deck or a burn deck, you know what's going on here. You'll be playing units, you'll be attacking in, making your opponent do something. You're the one in the driver's seat, you're asking the questions, you're getting the damage in, and then eventually your opponent will be like, okay, I'm starting to stabilize, and that's when you start throwing your burn spells at their face. Go like, Here we have Decimate. It's like Decimate to face, Get Excited to face, Mystic Shot to face, and you finish them off that way. This list plays Transfusion and Noxian Fervor. Use those to Transfusion to save your units that are important or just win combats. Noxian Fervor, you can use it to respond to removal spells similar to Glimpse from the other deck. Also a very cute trick if your opponent tries to play a drain spell like Vile Feast or a Grasp of the Undying. If you can kill your unit with Noxian Fervor, then they don't actually get any life. Let me just tell you, if you do that to your opponent, they are not going to be happy about that. Very good deck. I actually have 2 decks that you can upgrade into. One is called Discard Aggro, and the other is called Pirate Burn. Let us look at Discard Aggro first, because it stays in the Noxus and Piltover and Zon regions. And here we are. You are going to be playing Draven and Jinx as your 2 champions. You take out a lot of the burn for more of a discard synergy. You are playing more for the board. The deck plays by just flooding the board, getting big crowd favorites as a way to finish off the game. Leveled up Jinx with her rockets, dealing 4 to the face and 1 to everything on the board on your opponent's side is a good game winner. And then you will use your cards at discard to discard things such as the Jury Rigs, the Flame Chompers, the Visions, to get lots of value. You always have the dreams like Zonite Urchins, discarding Jury Rigs or Flame Chompers, and then maybe a Poro Cannon to discard a Vision. And then getting the Poros from the Poro Cannon gives you more things to discard. Pretty nice deck. Fairly, not that complex to play, but it's a little bit of, there's a little bit of complexity, such as, trying not to flood your hand with too many cards through things like Rummages and Poro Cannons, because you actually want Jinx to level up. Draven as well, his axes that he generates are also more discard fodder for your Zonite Urchins and stuff. A very fun deck. If you're looking for a more board-based aggressive deck, and you don't want the burn strategy as much as the burn deck that I showed you previously has, this is the deck for you. Next up, we're going to Pirate Burn. In Pirate Burn, we take out the Piltover and Zon, and we add in Bilgewater, and we keep the Noxus. But let's look at it real quick. Now, Pirate Burn is for the people who are more of a fan of the burn strategy than the unit-based beatdown. There's a lot of units here, not a lot of spells, of course. You lose things like Get Excited and Mystic Shot, but a lot of these units are actually just kind of burn spells themselves on a stick, if you think about it, really. Misfortune and Gangplank. Misfortune, as we talked about earlier in the Scouts deck, just a very good champion, gets a lot of chip damage in, makes combats really tricky for your opponent. Gangplank, he's just a big boy, 5-mana, 5/5. You're doing a lot of damage every turn, so he's going to level up really quickly. Levels up around, like, I'd say on average, maybe around turn 6, turn 7, which is about when you're trying to end the game. Before he even levels up to, of course, he still is a 5/5 who creates a Powder Keg. Powder Kegs have great synergy with things like Misfortune and the Saboteur, of course. Very nice. By going into Bilgewater, besides the champions, you also just get better units too, like Zap Sprayfin. Zap lets you have a 2/2 elusive, which, sure, small stats for a 4-drop, but being able to get your more burn spells like Death's Hand or Noxian Fervor, or if you feel like it, playing a One of Brothers Bond like this list does, lets you find them as well. You also get Jack the Winner, who is just a repeatable source of burn, just an extra 2 burn per turn for 0 mana, of course, as well, so that's really good. And then you also get Crackshot Corsair to get a little bit of extra chip damage in every turn, even if your opponent has ways to block. Very nice deck, very, very aggressive. So yeah, if you are looking for a more burn-oriented list, this is the list for you. You're going to be throwing a lot of burn at your opponent's face. Sure, there's a lot of units, but you're going to be suiciding your units in just to get activations of the Crackshot Corsairs, activations of Misfortune. Grenadier dying doesn't matter. Demolitionist also adds some extra burn. It's a very fun deck if you are that kind of player who likes to play the aggressive burn strategy. If you want a little more late game, you can add even another Captain Farron as well, but you probably don't need more late game. So, very fun deck. Highly recommended if you are the burn kind of player. If you're that guy who wants to play the mono red, the face hunter stuff, this is the deck for you. Next up, we got a very fun deck. My favorite deck I have saved for last for this list, and that is Undying. Now, for the budget version, we have stayed only in Mono Shadow Isles because for the second region, there are a lot of different regions you can choose. I tried to keep the list as a very simple list, very few epics, very few champions. As you can see, no champions at all, in fact. Very few, mostly just commons. Plays very similar in the early game to Endure with the a very, very similar unit suite in the early game as you got the Butcher, Curse Keeper, Synergy, Doom Beast, because that card is just great. Scribe of Sorrows, honestly, is just here as a budget choice. But the core of the deck, the Undying, 3-mana 2/2. He can't block, that sucks, but every time he dies, he comes back the next turn. You're going to want to kill this guy. You're going to want multiple copies of this guy on the board. You're just going to keep attacking in and putting in pressure. And if you can have, like, if you can find an Undying off of Stalking Shadows, even better. Create more copies using Chronicler of Ruins or Ethereal Remitters, great as well. Throw in some Atrocities because why not Atrocity on Undying if it gets big, right? Similar to Winter. Now, this list is all over the place because, as I was saying, it's more budget-oriented. The nice thing about this deck, though, is you don't actually need any champions, even in the upgraded version. Let's look at the upgraded version real quick. Still no champions. Some people like to add champions such as Twisted Fate, Callista. I've seen Hecarims before. But I said Twisted Fate and Callista, right? But honestly, I prefer no champions at all. Because, in my opinion, only maybe Callista really has synergy with this deck. The other champions, not that great synergy. I'd rather just play more ways to kill Undyings, more ways to get things killed and make way for the Undyings, or have the Undyings kill things. As you can see, still very Shadow Isles oriented. Our splash here is for Bilgewater. Some people like to play Demacia to get things like single combat, or Relentless Pursuit. Or I've seen even some people play Tiana. I don't think that's a good choice, but you can try it if you like to. Instead, we play here. We still get the rally effect from Relentless Pursuit in the form of Citrus Courier. Hired Gun plus Undying is a very cute combo. Hired Gun gives something vulnerable. Undying comes down and either kills it or just suicides into it to become bigger. Shakedown also is similar in that you can use Shakedown to give things vulnerable. You can also use it to kill your Undyings. Very fun deck. This is the kind of deck that I feel, if you come from a Magic background, this is very similar to to mono black strategies. They kind of like gonna kill my stuff, have it come back, just gonna annoy you stuff. Very fun deck though. One of my favorites. There's so many ways you can build this deck too. I know some people like other cards like Sheriff Lariat Rose. Some people like things such as Ruination. Wait, Ruination is in this deck. My bad. But yeah, this deck is, there's so many ways you can build this deck. Some people I've seen go Noxus and play things like Nox Cryo Arena. And what is it called? Noxian Fervor. Very powerful deck as well. But I don't think that's as good as this deck. I think this list, or at least I think Bilgewater, is the best region to pair Undying with because of all the ways to give your opponent's things vulnerable. And it's just very fun. So yeah, that is 5 decks, 5 budget decks for Legends of Runeterra. I hope you all enjoyed today's video. I hope you all learned something if you are new. Maybe you found a deck you would like to try. Real quick note, I will be putting the deck codes down below in both the description of the video and in a pinned comment, so you don't have to go through and basically add every single card into a deck one by one if you do want to copy one of these decks. So yeah, that's it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. If you think there is another budget deck that maybe I didn't mention or you like yourself, I would love to hear about it down in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed the video in general, I would also love it if you could leave a comment or a like down below. You know, really helps me out, yada yada. If you guys would like to watch me play some Legends of Runeterra, or just have questions for Legends of Runeterra for me, I stream pretty much every day over at my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Zenaton. And yeah, that's it. I hope you have a good time if you are a newer player to Legends of Runeterra, and I don't really have much else to say, so thank you all for watching this video. Hope to see you in the future in some of my future videos or streams. And yeah, thanks for watching the video. I hope to see you guys in another one soon. So until then, bye.